Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Deep Dive Wednesday class here with Guy Finley. First of all, hello to all you in the room. If you're in the room, by the way, turn off a cell phone if you have one on. And welcome to all of you who are online. This is a great evening to be able to discuss. I'm just going to tell you, if you're new today, the format of Deep Dive Wednesday is that we take this time to explore material you, our audience, have submitted to Guy to look at and explore more deeply. This includes any idea, insight, or specific reading from one of Guy's books, videos, or audio programs, or also any material from a favorite master that you would like greater insight into. Basically, if you have a question about this work, no matter where it comes from, and you'd like Guy to dive deeper into it, that's what Wednesday nights are about. And this is for you. And you can submit questions at any time to guyfinley.org/contact. And do submit. We're going to do this every 2 weeks, so you can submit them at any time along there. So if something comes up in a class or a book you've read, anything about that is game for Deep Dive Wednesday. So we hope you can do that. So Guy will give about 60 minutes worth of deep dive. We'll take a break, and then we'll have questions and answers after that, and you can all participate in that. So I think we'll get started. Here's tonight's topic: insights into the nature of suffering, surrender, and other painfully misunderstood ideas. And here's the key lesson number 1. No moment is painful in and of itself. Any conflict or suffering ascribed to it is a dark creation of our own unconsciousness, negative assessment of it. I'll read it once more. No moment is painful in and of itself. Any conflict or suffering ascribed to it is a dark creation of our own unconscious negative assessment of it.
So good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. If you're not joining us live, glad that you're here. As Doug described on Deep Dive Wednesdays, we do exactly that. We work in part to listen, in part to connect experience to what is being discussed, and then we work often together to look at the questions, the comments that are submitted by you, by the people in the room, wherever they may come from, so that we can do something that most of us don't understand the beauty of it. This room, and wherever I am teaching, has a single purpose, as does Deep Dive Wednesday, and that is that we're here to explore, not to come to conclusions. Unfortunately for us, most of our life is spent trying to figure out how to justify the conclusion that we're given in a moment that tells us what the moment means, who we are, and what we have to do about it, so that we never explore the reaction. We let the reaction tell us what has caused that pain or that suffering, and then we just simply follow along the lines that it presents as being the natural fruit of our intelligence, which of course proves itself endlessly futile to bring an end to that pain. So again, we examine the ideas we do here in order to explore the ideas, not to reach conclusions. Please understand that. I know for myself, and I can say it without a problem, so many things that I have said over the years, and I've been at this for a very long time, could now be seen as being in conflict with what I say now. But the truth is that the whole notion of conflict, as we understand it, unfortunately, disavows or doesn't allow for levels and scale. so that what is true at one level isn't true at another, or what is true at this level isn't true below, or they have a relationship, as all understanding does. So it's important that you realize I'm not here offering solutions in the guise of a meeting or of being a guru or a shmuru or whatever it is that people want. That's not what I do. I'm just like you in that I want to understand this life before I leave it. Because if I don't understand it before I leave it, what was the purpose of having it? And most of you have no real interest in understanding it because you're content with the understanding your reactions give you when moments come that you don't know how to reconcile. So your mind reconciles the questions that it produces, and because you don't examine that mind, you fail to see that everything it's giving you to reconcile the issue with is a creation of the mind that produced the problem to begin with, so that nothing happens. Literally nothing happens. It's just like being on a kind of psychic treadmill. Only that as you get older, it gets harder to, it seems to rise. It hasn't really risen at all. You're still on the same plane. It just feels like there's more to do. So we have about 6 topics or questions. I doubt that I'm going to get through 3, maybe 4 of them. But I want to invite you, when you are invited, as you will be, to participate, to please share what it is that you think, what you see about, in this instance, the question or the topic, so that we can begin this process of not, I forgot what it was, we had a student write in a couple, I don't know when it was, a week ago, and they said, you know, I really like the classes, but I get so frustrated with those students that get up and talk. I do too. And the person said it because apparently in her mind she knows so much more and she wants to get onto the advanced stuff. And I don't know how to explain this to you other than just to keep on poking it. Every moment is as advanced as anything is ever going to be. It's all in every moment. In the end, that is the discovery that sets you free. You keep looking for something that will match or somehow or other meet whatever it is that you think the moment's supposed to be like. And when it does, you've got pleasure. And when it doesn't, you have pain. And when you have pain, you have desire. When you have desire, you set out looking for another solution to your suffering that only exists because you have yet to understand that every moment is the seed of all moments. Literally. It's like ragu, spaghetti sauce. It's already in there. A lot of the questions that came in were correlated. They had a relationship to each other. And when I spend what little time I do, and it's not usually much on Wednesdays for deep dive, I like to explore it with you. Sometimes I can see there's a real theme to the direction of the questions, the directions of what's submitted. And there is a theme tonight. And we'll touch on it with the first and go all the way till we get as far as we can. So remember, we're exploring, not coming to conclusions. When do you get stressed? Every time you have something in you that is concluded that's right or that's wrong, you're stressed. Whereas if you're just exploring, you're just seeing. Let's have the first question or comment, whatever it may be.
Guy, you recently spoke on the idea of surrender in the context of surrendering personal will to the will of God in the given moment. What came to me as a result of considering this idea is what must be a relationship between humility and surrender. Are they the same?
Read it once more.
You recently spoke on the idea of surrender in the context of surrendering personal will to the will of God in the given moment. What came to me as a result of considering this idea is what must be a relationship between humility and surrender. Are they the same?
So, as always, I open the discussion by inviting you in. You have heard what the person is asking. What do you think is behind the question the person is asking? What has the person who's asking this question potentially yet to see about the subject? You understand? That's what I always want to do with you, is what can I see about this that might help what someone else has yet to see about it? Does anybody have any thoughts? Patricia? Patricia said one follows another, that somehow or other she's saying surrender and surrender follows humility. Is that what you're saying? Or humility follows surrender? Babs? She said, I don't think you can have surrender without humility. Anybody else? Leah? Only you would ask that question. She said, if I surrender, am I humble? Who else has a thought? What do you think this person's getting to? Anybody? I'm wondering why some of you don't say, well, this person obviously must be in pain. And the question is born not so much out of seeking a solution to this relationship between suffering and humility, but how do I get to the point where do I need to be humble or do I need to surrender in order to get through whatever this conflict is that's my daily visitor? Can you see that might be in the question? We're not casting stones here. We're just looking to see. I can tell you that a person asks a question like this because they have yet to figure out how to surrender. And if I can't figure out how to surrender, then maybe humility is the path. And if humility is not the path, then I'm in trouble, Leah. So I want to look at something with you, and I really do want your feedback. I was just sitting here waiting to start talking, and I saw something with such clarity, which, by the way, whenever you are silently asking, not actively asking, but wishing to understand what you don't understand, and sitting in that wish open to whatever you might receive as a result of being temporarily, by the way, being open and being quiet are very similar. You will see things, you'll be shown things. And as a consequence, wasn't anything I intended to talk about relative to this first question, but it's the whole 9 yards. It's the answer to everything we're going to look at tonight. So I wrote it out quickly in a key lesson, and I'm going to ask for it to please be brought up on the board so you can see it with me. We're going to study this together. There's no way on God's green earth that I can implant in you the significance of it, and not because I have shared it with you. Humility is the one true order of all living things in creation, while the whole idea of surrendering is largely born out of our conflict with life and the pain born of being out of order. Humility is the one true order of all living things in creation, while the whole idea of surrendering is largely born out of our conflict with life and the pain of being out of order. Let's take the first part. Humility is the one true order of all living things in creation. Wasn't Christ called the lowest of them all? Why? Because he represents that which all things flow into and from out of which all things flow in following. But to the point of this idea is what? Why is humility the one true order of all things in creation? I'll ask you now, what do you think? First of all, how many of you can touch that a little bit? Anybody? What does that mean? Why is humility the true order of all things in creation? Anybody? Chris? She said it comes from seeing what we are, and this is true enough, but that is not, try not to reach for conclusions. What is it about it, John? Everything sits beneath all things and above all things. Everything must receive life to be part of life. Everything must receive light to be part of the life that light gives. So that everything is flowing like vine into branch. The branch is lower than the vine, even though it is an extension of it. And the vine can't give to the branch unless the branch is open to receive what is flowing into it. And if it has no humility, it has no fruit. I don't know what you look at all day long, what your mind is occupied with, but you look at nature, as I always urge you to do. As above, so below, to use the God-given world that we're in, that is the absolute reflection of everything that you will ever need to know and participate in. And in this instance, you can see the one true order of all living things is that everything receives, everything takes, everything gives. And in order for that ceaseless reconciliation to take place between the highest and the lowest, everything must constantly recognize itself as being needful of what it is given to be alive. Needful of what it is given to be alive. You can't have humility and have expectations. Demands are antithetical to humility. Are they not? Isn't the idea of life owes me something? Show me where there's humility in the idea that I'm owed, that you should be this way. Or as Doug was saying prior, that this should unfold on the phone with the Apple people the way I want it to. Where is the humility in that? And if there's no humility, what takes the place of humility? Arrogance. I am in a constant state of conflict with anything that challenges the assumed order that I believe is the way things should be. Humility is the one true order. Look, if humility is the one true, how many of you at least get a feeling of that? Yeah? If it's the one true order of all living things in creation, am I not a creation? I know some of you aren't. I've watched you. No, all things, that means I'm part of this divine circulation where if I don't yield to what is above me for the purpose of being transformed by what is passing into me, it's impossible for any transformation to take place without humility. No humility, no transformation. Please, do you see it? While the whole idea of surrendering is largely born out of our conflict with life and the pain of what? Of being out of order. You and I think demands are the way in which we put things into order. But demands are the antithesis of order. No creature demands of any other creature that it fulfill the purpose of its existence. Every creature lives in a natural relationship with the whole level and scale of existence itself, constantly giving itself to what requires what it needs from that creature. Surrendering is largely born of our conflict with life. So this person has asked, I spoke of the idea of surrender in the context of surrendering personal will to the will of God. What came to me is there is a relationship between humility and surrender. And here's what I'm looking at. Because they're asking, we agreed, why is it so darn hard to surrender? Yes? Why is it so hard to surrender? Have you ever wondered why it's so hard to surrender? I'm asking you. Because surrender is an imagined solution to the conflict of being out of order. Look, how do I say this? Surrender is not an act of will. It's so popular. I surrender. I surrender. No, look at me. Surrender is not an act of will. Surrender is what happens when, through natural humility, the will is recognized as antithetical to one's relationship with the divine. And the only way in which the will becomes seen as antithetical to the relationship with the divine is when, because of that will, there's this endless conflict with life. Because is there conflict in life? Does nature have conflict that doesn't serve the whole? Does your conflict serve the whole? No, my conflict serves the whole of my idea about what's wrong with you, that you're not in the proper order of things when I'm talking to you or when I'm looking at the world around me. And it breeds ugliness. It breeds conflict. And the world, this is difficult to understand. All of that energy doesn't go to waste. You have wasted your possibility for fulfilling the purpose of a moment, but that energy, in the great scheme of things, energy is neither created, destroyed, it's only transformed. What do you think happens to all the energy born out of an endless conflict, which, by the way, has reached escalated levels never before seen because of the confluence and the popularity of social interaction and television and news and all the rest of it? And what? And all of the urgency, we talked about urgency, didn't we? All of this urgency that what? That this conflict goes away when at last my party, my people, my power is finally confirmed and I'm set free. You can't be set free of the pain of conflict without understanding the consciousness that is the conflict itself. Bring up the key lesson 2.9, whatever it was. My poor staff, my poor kids, I come in and I'm scrambling because I'm having new ideas right before I speak, and then I'm shooting them off in text messages. It's a miracle anything happens here. What does this read? Say it with me. Surrender is the end of desire, not its unseen continuation, born of having become identified with yet another aesthetically pleasing image of freedom. But do you understand anything that's happened? I'm trying to show you that surrendering to the divine is our solution to the conflict we have with the divine. But we don't say it's with the divine, we say it's with the world that would be divine if only I were the king. So what happened without, like some slow form of corruption, some deeply abscessed aberration inside of this unconscious nature, is that over time, because blessed are the poor in spirit, what Christ said, over time, poor in spirit, that's good for other people. And I'll be humble when I get everything that I've asked for. I'll become a true, beneficent source of goodness in this world. Once I have all the goodness I need in place, everything will be great. And so what happened is, because this mind has decided what the order of things is, having nothing to do with what the real order of things is, which is built into every moment. There's no moment in which the whole of the order of life isn't expressing itself. And you and I are intended to be a part of that order, to know ourselves as the order, not outside of it, but a participant in it. But we don't want to be a participant in the proper order of things. We want to have power over the order of things so we can participate in the kingdom that we've imagined. Do you see it with me? So if it's true what I'm saying, and it is, but you can only You just have to see it. It's there right in front of you. That's the whole thing. What was it T.S. Eliot? We'll make this big, long journey, and we'll get right back and find out we never left where we started from. Where you start is your awareness of a relationship with a ceaseless form of humility, a ceaseless form of what is never-endingly having everything given to it that it needs to be complete in that moment. So what happens is I don't feel complete because I have all of these ideas about what the right order of things are, and we're inculcated with it. I don't know about you, I grew up believing that the right order of things was that I walked into a restaurant and didn't have to wait for a table because I came from a very successful family. That was my idea of the order of things. Oh, Mr. Finley, not me. Please, your table's waiting for you. That was the right order of things. That wherever I go, people should yield to whatever it is that I want, and if they don't yield to what I want, the fundamental problem isn't my demand. The fundamental problem is that they don't realize who they're talking to. So then my life is filled with the conflict of trying to convince you that I am the way I imagine myself, which produces endless resistance. And in the end, what do I want to do? It's so painful trying to get people to like me. It's so painful. And so what do? I'm in pain. But I believe the pain is because the world isn't participating in the order I understand. Instead of recognizing that it is this ad hoc addition of my order to everything that takes place that brings in constant conflict to me, and then my solution to this conflict that I don't know what to do with is I'm going to surrender it. You can't surrender a conflict that asks you to be at once what you want and at the same time to escape the pain of it. It's impossible. Because life is always, without you knowing it, laying in front of you everything that's supposed to take place. And when it doesn't take place, there's pain. And the pain produces all of these desires. These desires give rise to more demands. And the more demands you have that life coincide with what you need to be consoled, the more you make demands, the more conflict there is. So the demand on life isn't the solution to the suffering, it's part of it. And at a certain point, as this person is saying, the context of surrendering the personal will to the will of God in the given moment. You don't understand this. You don't know what the will of God is. How can you surrender to it? You don't have a clue. I've described to you what the will of the divine is at this level. It is that the will of heaven be done on the will of earth. And the only way the will of heaven can be done on the will of earth, to bring the earth into a heavenly relationship with the will of God, is when the will of the earth has humility, which is what humus is, I might add. So, and I get it. I'm trying to figure out how to save myself. And I didn't save myself here. I became a Jew, I became a Christian, I became a Muslim, I became a Buddhist. I drank gallons of carrot juice. I'm talking about myself. Did everything under the sun, and I'm still a wreck. Fear visits me at the drop of a hat. Anxiety never goes away. I don't understand why people just don't jump when I say jump and ask how high. My mother used to say, do you really think people are supposed to jump when you say something? How well she knew me. No. No. The God that you're trying to surrender to is the same God inside of you that you don't know is there, telling you what's wrong with your life, telling you this is a problem. So the God of your problems becomes the opposite, which is the God of the pleasure of surrendering and being free of your conflict. You're never going to get there. So this idea that, back to the question, a result of considering what must be a relationship between humility and surrender, are they the same? No. Humility by its nature is the surrender of the will that stands in the way of what is divine. Whereas surrender by itself as a path to being humble or hoping to have something heavenly. Surrender is the way in which this mind imagines what it has to have, be, or do in order to get rid of the pain that exists only because this mind keeps imagining what it has to do, have, or be. Everybody get that? I think that's probably good enough for that one. I could talk for days on that one idea. Humility is the natural order of things. Why can't I be in the natural order of things? Why do I have to think about surrendering if I actually see my place in the scheme of things? Do you understand? If I actually see my place in the scheme of things, and that's both in the sense of seeing my place in the scheme of things the way I suffer because the scheme of things doesn't support me, versus seeing myself in the scheme of things and realizing that if it weren't given to me to sit here and be filled with this energy and these ideas and these thoughts, if something wasn't moving my mouth, there'd be nothing.
It's a great example of a deep dive right there, and on humility and surrender. But we're not done diving. We're going deeper with this one on a very similar topic. The questioner says, I keep seeing the same thing again. I am a completely bankrupt individual. Every time dark and tormenting thoughts come for me, I find myself powerless to do anything but be taken over by them. My life is not my own. I don't want to admit this, but I know it's true. We're taught that letting go and surrendering happens when it's just too painful to continue to hang on. But sadly, something in me clings to what I say I don't want. Does this torment ever end? All this nature does is resist. Any light and guidance you can share with me would be greatly appreciated.
So what's this person asking? What are they alluding to? What do they want to learn? Please, anybody? Do we need to read it again? Can you read it yourself? Terry. How do I stop suffering? John? Barbara. So I'm suffering like endlessly, and I keep seeing over and over again, apparently I'm a bankrupt person, meaning I keep running into this moment where I want to meet life, maybe with even my wish to surrender. Again, I want to tie all this in, but I'm unable to do it because there's nothing in me presently that is capable of doing what it is. I'm taught letting go and surrendering happens when it's too painful. And how much more pain do I have to have? Do you understand? Isn't that the root of it? Aren't they saying, I can't take it? Can't take it no more. I'm not making fun of it. Let's bring up the third key lesson. It'll set the stage for our study. Let me know when it's up. There it is. Read along with me, okay? Remember what we're looking for. I can't stand this pain anymore, but I'm stuck. I'm stuck. Isn't that person saying, I'm stuck? I want to surrender to this pain, these tormenting thoughts, but I'm powerless. I feel powerless to do anything but be taken over by them. My life isn't my own. I don't want to admit it. But how much pain does it take before I'm finally liberated? And listen, according to my idea of what that liberation would bring to me when I finally get to the end of this pain. Read the key lesson with me. There is no end to the torment of resistance until the futility of our unconscious resistance to it is fully realized. There's no end to the torment of resistance. Let's look at that first part together. What does that mean? There's no end to the torment of resistance. Who can help this person and everybody that's listening What does it mean there's no end to the torment of resistance? Anybody? Terry. She said, what you resist will continually persist. Okay, that's fine. Anybody else? Wayne.
Well, with resistance continues.
Okay, he tried to get something out. It was close. What he was saying is, and I'll ask you, what is it that I'm actually resisting all the time? And don't answer mechanically. This person is in a constant state, as he says, she says, that I am a bankrupt individual because these tormenting thoughts come to me and I don't know what to do with them. I don't know how to free myself from the pain of them, and they seem too great for me to deal with. So what then is the actual nature of this resistance? We know for a fact the resistance that we think we feel is to the world around us and the people that don't cooperate with what the order is we've established for ourselves. But is that the real resistance? Or is the real resistance, Chris is going to tell us, she said, is the pain of seeing what I am. We can go there. Ellen? I'm resisting the experience of myself. So the reason that there's no end to the torment of resistance is because every time I have an experience that has pain in it, the only thing I know to do is to try to produce a scenario under which that pain goes away, because I take control of the order of things around me, and when everything's reordered, then I'll be free, roughly. The reason there's no end to the torment of resistance is because you're not resisting the condition your mind points to. You're resisting a consciousness that resists everything that doesn't align with its order. So where is the conflict that's producing this resistance? Where is this resistance being produced? Is it between me and the world that doesn't align? Or is it born of an experience, an endless experience, I might add, where suddenly I'm looking out and life doesn't look like it's going to do, my own thoughts are against me, and all I know to do is to resist the condition that I blame the conflict on. You cannot escape the torment that repeats itself until you realize the nature that only knows how to repeat itself. And why does that nature repeat itself, constantly resist itself? That's the second part. Until the futility of our unconscious resistance to that nature is fully realized. This is where it gets tough for people. I don't believe for a split second that when I'm angry or frightened or anxious, that the pain, the torment of this life, that I believe completely in whatever that moment is telling me that justifies the suffering I'm in. Isn't that what I believe is the source of my pain? And I have a relatively short laundry list. Some of us have a laundry list that goes on for like ever. But by and large, most of what I'm experiencing is this constant, go back to the question as it's posed, we're taught that letting go happens when it's too painful to continue hanging on. But sadly, something in me clings to what I say I don't want. What if what you say you don't want is exactly what that nature wants, which is the endless repetition of an experience of yourself that seems to have no end, because there's no end to that unconscious nature running itself in loops, which is what it does. Do you see that? Surrender has nothing to do with becoming identified with any image. Surrender has nothing to do with being identified with any image, regardless how noble or profound that image may be. For us, surrendering is what happens when we have this idea of, I have this, like for instance, when am I going to get to the point where this pain is so great that I finally surrender it? you'll get to the point where the pain is so great that you finally surrender it when you see how absolutely useless it is for you to keep identifying with that pain, because that's the problem. Isn't it true? Do it. Take your two hands and push them against each other. Here I am. I'm this person. I don't want this pain. And here's the person, the problem, the situation that I don't want. Go ahead. Get rid of it. Push it away. Push. Not pushing. You see, you're not really trying. See, you have to really try. This is what your mind is always doing it. Now, when you really push, does that feel good? Well, why? Because there's no solution to that pain. You can't push the pain away. You can't push the self that you don't want to be away with any idea that you have about how to rescue yourself from it. It's impossible. Identification is how, you ever hear the expression kicking the can down the road? This person, and look, does anybody not understand what he or she is saying? It's tough, isn't it? When in the name of God is this pain going to go away? I've read, I've studied, I've meditated, I've medicated. I've issued my prayers. I live in a kind of constant darkness. Now listen. That I find myself in when conditions suddenly produce the experience of a me I don't want to be. Until that moment, I don't know that darkness. If this person is honest with himself or herself, they will admit that this torment comes in waves. It's not ceaseless. And the reason it comes in waves is because that's all that consciousness can produce, is waves of resistance. Because at a certain point, when that resistance comes and it's met with, I don't want to be like this. Well, what happens when a man or a woman realizes it has done me no good whatsoever to not want to be like this? Please, take that in. I spent my life not wanting to be someone who is in torment over my family relationships, over my finances, over my health, over whatever it may be. And I'm not always in all of those things at once. That doesn't exist, does it? It's always a little portion of a poison that comes in the cup of a thought, first painted silver, that then corrupts, because I get caught up in what? I don't want to be me. You, he, her, has to see the futility of not wanting to be you. Because that's all I know to be when something doesn't feel the way it's supposed to be. Do you know anything else? Yes or no? It's all that's there is resistance. And then out of that resistance, the mind will dangle something divine, the idea of surrender. It'll dangle something delicious, a time to come. And for a split second, I escape the experience of not wanting to be myself because the consciousness responsible for it has simply painted another time when I'll be free of that. And so I identify with that. And in the moment of identifying with the time to come where I'll be free, I've created a captivity yet to reveal itself to me, because the captivity is not in time. The captivity is in a consciousness that believes it can escape the experience of itself by imagining surrendering to something. And you can't come to the end of not wanting to be you until you see the futility of trying not to be you. Because that's what your life is. Everything the mind runs and says and does and plans and all of the king's horses and the king's men, all of that activity is an ad hoc attempt of this nature to escape the experience of what it has created in its own image. That's what it does. And when it comes full circle, I'm in torment. How could this go? Have you ever said this? How could this have happened? It happened the moment you didn't want something else that was happening. Literally, in that same moment. Because why? Full circle. Because in that moment, I avoided humiliation. Please? This is no good if you're not working with me. Here I am, and it's full circle. I'm a mess. I'm a wreck. Everything I'd vested myself in, my relationships, the people, it's all pointless. Yes or no? Doesn't it seem all pointless? Everything gone. Yes or no? And in that moment, instead of accepting the humility of seeing that this mind can't create order of itself, that it can enter into and save itself, instead, it just simply invents another order where I'm not the one in this situation, I'm the one who doesn't want to be in it. How long have you been trying to get out of the situation that when that suffering comes, you don't want to be in it? Can you count it? Or is that what reincarnation is? Just over and over and over again. I don't want to see how savage I can be. I don't want to see how jealous I am. I don't want to see how much greed there is in every bone of my body. I want nothing to do with these appetites that always have excuses for themselves. I want out, I want out, I want out. And you can't get out of a mind that creates the condition that, as it does, creates the sense of self that's trapped by it. It's impossible. And that's where humility comes in. The end of the torment that he's asking about comes when we come to the end of trying to save ourselves. Now, when will I finally get to the point where I stop trying to save myself? When does that happen? Anybody? When I see what a waste of time that is, how insane. Because all I do is bring myself back into some other position produced on another imagined order or something that's going to save me from myself. Isn't every form of an addiction the way in which this consciousness that creates the addiction in order to complete itself through what it imagines will do so, isn't every form of addiction a way in which I bring myself into the condition that I hate myself for? Yes or no? So what could bring me into a condition, tell me this is good, and in doing what it tells me is good, I wind up hating and judging myself? Which one am I? The one that knows the good or the one that hates what became of what I thought was good? And when you see that, the mind, it begins to slow down. The whole speed of it, not just intellectually, emotional, even physically. All the parts, they begin to slow down because you recognize that you're feeding those parts with not wanting to participate in what they've produced. You actually see that, and you don't come to an end. You don't bring about the surrender. The surrender is built into the humility of seeing your actual state as a human being.
Here's question number 3. Years ago, Guy did a series called The Road to Good Fortune. In one talk, he revealed and described fascinating aspects, characteristics, and unseen dynamics having to do with attention. He presented his observations in a unique way, how attention carries weight, isolates, illuminates, integrates, violates. My request is to ask Guy, can he please comment on how, for instance, other aspects of life may have similar hidden or misunderstood qualities and characteristics. For example, awareness, love, gratitude, graciousness, faith, and other aspects of life that, when aligned, are a state of being rather than a preconceived manifestation of the mind.
What do you think? Does anybody know what this person is asking? So for the person who wrote it, and these, while they're not the brightest bulbs in the pack, nobody really understands what you're asking. Now, how can no one understand what you're asking if what you're asking has, how do I say this to you? What you're looking for can't be found in the way you phrased the question. And this really is an important point. What's the first thing that happens when any of us run into an unwanted moment? Doesn't the mind pose a question? Isn't that the first thing it does? It could be as simple as what happened. Doesn't it seem that asking the question, what happened, is very innocent? Doesn't it? What if the question, what happened, that seems to mean that somehow, back to the other two questions, I'm actually innocent in the experience of this moment? Because if I ask what happened, I just don't know. Like, what was that dog in that? I don't know. Scooby-Doo. We become instant Scooby-Doo selves. I don't know what happened. It's like that, or it's sometimes a little more urgent than that. But what happened implies that something took place that I have no responsibility in at all. Isn't that inherent in the question? So, A, is it true that I have no relationship to the experience, or is the truth that the experience is inseparable from my perception of the moment, and that what's happened is that I'm being punished by my own best ideas in that moment? That's actually what's happening. But more to the point of what this person's asking. Because what he wants to know, essentially, is the way the mind presently works. It wants constantly to find a saving grace. Now, the saving grace could be the word surrender, and he used words like, where did they go? Like words like awareness, love, gratitude, faith. He used words in his question that as he thinks about those words, he wants to know how and what the associations are connected to those words so that his mind can perhaps properly explore and examine what the lineage of those words would be given his need, in quotes, to understand them. And his need to understand them begins with what? Usually with some kind of pain, something that isn't complete and that needs to be completed through my consideration of whatever my mind is wrapping itself around. Everybody still following me? So I want to show you something quite above that, if you are willing to look at it with me. Let's bring up the last of the key lessons, please. Why is it we rarely, if ever, come to a stop and realize the plans we keep making in this world as often as not count as nothing, given the fact that our day has already made plans for us? Why is it we rarely, if ever, come to a stop and realize the plans we keep making in this world as often as not count as nothing? Do they as often as not count as nothing? Yes. Micro and macrocosmically? Yes or no? Why? Because we keep running into the plans that someone or something else made for us. The day has its own direction. Now we're taught that the direction the day is going in can't be the only direction, because it's not going in the direction I want it to go in. The day's out of order. But what is it that we call the day, other than our moment-to-moment experience of a certain set of circumstances that produce in this consciousness that ray of light, that produce in this consciousness the experience it has? Please? So here I am, and I'm never-endingly running into a moment where my plans and my expectations are not met by your behavior or the way the world is proceeding in that moment. And what is that the definition of? Conflict. So when I'm in conflict, as I am all the time, because I never stop thinking about how to make my order, how to put it over. What do they call it when you have a plastic piece of, a clear through piece of plastic and you put it on top of something? And a laminate. We live with a file folder of laminates, and that every moment comes out and we get one of these laminates out, we put it over the moment, and look, this is way out of order. This part does not line up at all with the way that this laminate, is that the right word that I want? It's okay? Okay. Huh? Yeah, no, that's not what I want. An overlay. That was the word I was looking for. What's wrong with you, Terry? It wasn't a laminate. An overlay. I am a living body of overlay. Everything I see has I overlay on it the order of how that should be going. Do you not? And how does it feel to you when you put your overlay, meaning your expectations, demands, the order of things you expect? What is that like when you put it on what the day is actually like? It's out of whack. But I don't think to myself, the moment is the problem. I mean, I don't think to myself that my overlay is the problem. How could it be when I feel so strongly about how good it is? My concern and my only conflict is with the moment that doesn't match the overlay I have of it. Please? So this person is saying, what about these words, faith, surrender, graciousness, awareness, love, all the rest of that? The question assumes, without asking it, that these qualities are somehow separate from the whole of the moment. That there is this moment where there is awareness, there is this moment where there's love, there is this moment where there's this faith, there's this moment where there's grace. And I want to know the associations with these ideals and images so that I can build on those ideas and those images, because I want to, in quotes, know more about it. And perhaps it's a genuine interest. I'm not judging. I'm simply saying, can you see with me as we look at this, that there is this constant idea inside of us that if somehow I could obtain the ability to place everything in its order, then I would have automatically a relationship with these terms that I'm seeking to bring an end to the torment of being out of order with life. Here's what I want to say it more simply. Imagine a certain part of a river that's at odds with the rest of the river that it's in, so that it's measuring the way the river should move, the speed of it, the color, the temperature. It never stops measuring the river that it's a part of, because it believes, it's imagined that it is not a part of that flow. What I'm saying to you is that these words that this person has asked about, what are the relationships to these words? They're built into the whole of the relationship in that moment. And there is no other way to understand these words other than as part of the movement of the whole thing. Do you remember where we started this meeting? Anybody? We said that, let's bring up the first of the key lessons. We'll end on this. What did we say? Let me know when it's up. No, not the key lesson 1. I guess key lesson 2A. There it is. Humility is the true order of all living things in creation. All living things in creation are participants in the whole of creation, regardless the scope of their individuality. Awareness, faith, grace, love, kindness. Those things are words that human beings have invented in order to deal with the way in which they are out of order. I don't have to try to be kind. You're taught to try to be kind. You're taught to try to be without fear. You're taught not to be a certain kind of person. Are you not? And not wanting to be a certain kind of person puts me in conflict with a consciousness that only knows how to be that way. That's what it is. And that consciousness then invents the idea of surrendering, of faith that would lead to surrender, of grace that would bring about the end of this torment, all of the things that we studied together. It invents for itself some kind of thing that it can enter into and have a momentary respite from the conflict that it generates in its own unconscious nature. Only to see that is to enter into two things at once. One, oh my God. Oh my God. How could have I been that blind to actually believe that my pain proves I'm other than what I don't want to take part in? When it's the fact that I don't want to take part in what is showing me and bringing to me this natural humility, this natural relationship, it's my avoidance of that perpetuates the pain. Not my idea of how to bring an end to that pain through some new word that I identify with and hope that will save me. Humility is the one true order of all living things. You don't need to know about faith. See, you just have to get there. I can't. You're inculcated. You're conditioned. Faith. Yes, I need faith. Did the mustard seed need faith to be the greatest of all things? Not in becoming something great. It was built into its nature, wasn't it? And what was its nature? The smallest of all things. Grace. For me, the idea of grace is something's going to come along and get me out of the pain that I'm in. What if real grace is showing me that the pain I'm in is self-inflicted, belongs to a consciousness that doesn't understand itself? Then do I need grace? Or is grace built into the very revelation itself that reveals to me the truth of my nature? Isn't that the true nature of grace? The true nature of faith isn't required if I understand I can't save myself as I am. So that you can go through all of these iterations, which I started this talk with, is that we're here to explore, not to reach conclusions. Because the more willing we are to explore the consciousness, the content of ourselves, the clearer it becomes to us that that's our only possibility. You have no authority. But the light that reveals this consciousness is forever granting you the realization that releases you from what you have presently been able to, in quotes, surrender yourself to. Got it? Let's take a break. We got through 3.
Welcome back, everyone. We're going to get started with our questions and answers tonight. I have just a couple quick announcements I want to say right now is that we have a really great schedule from rest of this week. Friday night, we have our student-led study group, which you're all invited to, and that's from our talk on Sunday. So if you've listened to that or haven't, do listen to it and participate at 7 p.m. Pacific. You're all invited to that, and you'll get a reminder. And Saturday, there's two great events. A normal Insight Timer at 8 a.m. Pacific, and we're going to have a Facebook and YouTube class at 1:30 Pacific. This is our volunteer weekend. I think that's the new name, where we volunteer and do stuff, and then we eat, and then we have this class with Guy. Students in the room can ask questions, and we have a participatory class, and it's a great time together. So don't miss that. Saturday, 1:30 Pacific. Then, of course, Sunday, our regular class. So don't miss any of that. I think that's all we need to do right now. Guy has told me he has nothing on, but I do want to invite you, if you're on GoToWebinar especially, you can raise your hand by clicking on that little hand icon. And if you're on any of the other platforms, just go to the chat box and you can send in a written question and we'll read that up here. We do have a few written questions, Guy. We'll start with Chris. She says, or asks, "Hi, Guy. You have mentioned on several occasions the concept of singularity. Can you expand on this subject in general, and then specific to life and death? Are they a singularity?"
Hi, Chris. My mind is looking for a good analogy. You know, your mind is meant to be like a good dog, not a bad dog. You have a bad dog for a mind. You do. It runs everywhere it wants to run, digs anywhere it thinks might find something good, and then brings the dirt back into your house. A good dog is always at your heel, waiting intuitively for your instruction, and then willing to do what it is that is needed in that moment. So, Chris, bear with me. I hope that I can make this clear enough. I alluded to this several times while we were speaking tonight. We don't know any other way for a mind to operate other than the way our mind operates. And we would never know that our mind operates incorrectly if it weren't for the constant conflict that incorrect action creates. It is the awareness of that conflict that gradually leads a person to stop suspecting the world as the source of their pain and realize that it may be connected to something in the way they perceive the life around them and then resist their own perception. This mind perceives everything as separate from itself. It looks at everyone and everything, and by a kind of unconscious assumption, arrives at the conclusion that what it is looking at is responsible for its experience of that moment, whatever that experience may be, good or bad. The point of this is that the mind is a separating mind, because it is a mind separated from itself. It is a divided mind. A divided mind requires things to be for and against, to want and not want, so that it can continually generate a sense of self from that relationship. So this mind, by its very makeup, if you will, by its nature, is a mind that that lives in duality. You've heard the word. It is a mind that lives in duality. I'm explaining to you what duality is. Duality is a mind that looks at an image and believes that the image it's seeing is separate from the self that's looking at it. That's what duality is. Duality is identifying with the image and then believing that that sense of self is a creation of the image you're looking at, instead of seeing that they are in fact a singularity. Real singularity begins with discovering how you live from a mind that is in constant duality, because you can't see duality until there is something there that isn't part of the two opposites working against or for each other. It's impossible. So awakening, and all of you have had moments where you've awakened. Chris, I assume you have too. What is a moment of awakening? It is the sudden realization of I'm divided. Isn't it? I thought I see, I don't see. I thought I understood, I don't understand. Well, who now sees and who now understands when all there was before was some me that was convinced I saw and understood? So all of a sudden, there's another view, another whole understanding of what was an incomplete understanding before. That new understanding is a moment of singularity, because it allows you to see the opposites that you never recognized were duality, hiding as a self and what it experiences. Do you understand what I'm saying? Do you understand? For Chris? So, with that in mind, the idea of this duality, yes or no? Now, duality doesn't know anything about flow. Duality imagines flow, so it can imagine itself as someone who understands flow and enter into what they've imagined so they can feel good flowing in that stream of thought. Thought doesn't flow. What happens is that a person begins to understand that the yin and the yang, the opposites, the positive and negative, the affirming and the denying, that these things are in a ceaseless flux. One becoming the other becoming the other. That's what it is. There's no yin that goes, the hell with you, yang. There's no yang that goes, I'm not about to submit to yin. I'm a man. Nothing like that exists in reality, because in reality, everything is assuming the lowest place so that what is above it for the moment can flow in. But when the yang flows into the yin becomes the yang and assumes the superior or active position, so that there's this unending circulation that exists between forces. And if there's an unending circulation through the creation that these forces bring about, that means that there is no duality. That means that life and death are not separate. They're not a life that becomes death. They're not a death that becomes life. They are, and life and death are the endless revelation of a creation without end. That's what life and death are. And when you enter into the realization, the awareness of that creation without end, which is what we talked about, wasn't it? Humility. You enter into that. Does life and death exist anymore? Is death something you fear? Or do you understand death's just part of a movement? That's all death is. It's just part of a movement. And what is life? It's just part of the movement of death. There isn't one or the other. It really hurts my ear. Is anybody messing with anything? I wonder if they hear that out there. John, forget that. I don't care about the clicking. Go back. Leave it. Leave the clicking. Give it another second. Hello? I'll just talk like this. Do you know why it's hard for you to have fun? Because you think everything hinges on what you expect or shouldn't expect. How can you be spontaneous? There's no spontaneousness in conclusions, in demands, none. What is truly spontaneous is born out of humility. It's just part of a movement. You take place in it. So back to what Chris is asking, I think I explained it fairly well enough. Everybody agree? I hope that helped, Chris. Douglas?
Here's another written question. This is from Alterability on YouTube. Is the following accurate? Attachment to outcome is limitation, caused by the mind judging the world as good, desires, and bad, aversions. We're unhappy when we dislike reality, what happened or could happen.
I like that alterability. Attachment to outcome is limitation. Who wants to enlarge on that? Why is attachment to outcome limitation? Ellen?
Because there are a million possibilities, but when you've already identified with one outcome.
Yes. Attachment is the end of exploration, isn't it? Attachment is the essence of duality, isn't it? And in that duality, conflict with that which isn't the way you want it to be, and then the demand that it turns out to order that your overlay, not your laminate, that your overlay. Wouldn't it be a trip if there was a way, just for grins, for you to make like 15 overlays of some kind, and for you to walk around and have a moment go, and for you to have to go like look through your overlays that most likely represents how that moment should be. You would know there was something fundamentally wrong as you were scrambling through your overlays to put up on the scene, wouldn't you? But see, that happens like that. But in real time, you'll eventually come to see how your mind starts searching through the content of itself, looking for what it was already attached to somehow or other escape the pain of realizing that what it was attached to is now threatened, which means the image of myself is also threatened, and I have to then start figuring out how to surrender. It just makes this beautiful constant circle, if you can see it, this circulation. Anything else in our queue, Doug?
We have another question.
Okay.
And Kate asked me to say that they know that the audio is low on the people online, and we'll have it fixed by the next class. We'll work to get it fixed by the next class. Here's a question from Darren on YouTube. I recently listened to one of your short talks on YouTube about the fear of rejection. So is it that I'm wanting to be celebrated just for showing up, and when I'm not, I'm the victim of them not celebrating me? So this is narcissism?
I recently listened to one of your short talks on YouTube about the fear of rejection. Well, let's, first of all, if you're on listening, Darren, how many of you understand how deep the fear of rejection runs? Now, do you understand that part of the fear of rejection is the desperate attempt to have people like you? Now, in order for people to like me, I have to find something in me that's likable. If I have to go looking for something that's likable, is it me? Is it? No. If I'm looking to how to be likable, apparently it's not mine, but I have images of what it's like to be likable because I've seen likable people, or what I think are likable people. And so my action in that moment, in order to get rid of the fear of rejection, is to pretend to be something I'm not. But I don't know I'm pretending to be something not but I'm in total fear of someone challenging the image that I've identified with. Everybody following the math? So, what is narcissism? Don't miss this. It is written in quotes, and for good reason, not for the religious ideology. Thou shalt not have any graven images. Did you ever think that in that statement of this proper relationship to the moment, that to have a graven image is the highest form of narcissism? Isn't it? Because in what image is that made? Is the golden calf the golden calf? Is the golden guy the golden Terry? Is that really a golden person? Or is it made in the image of something I believe will bring to me the good fortune connected to what I'm worshiping? So I don't think to myself, I'm worshiping what I'm pretending to be, but I obviously am worshiping it. And when someone doesn't bend down on a knee and go, you are as you're pretending to be, then I find fault with them. Can you see it, everybody? Is there humility in narcissism? Is there? But what about fake humility? That's a form of narcissism, isn't it? Because I have an idea of what I should look like and act like around people. And if I can just pull it off, then they're going to be on the right page with me, seeing and perceiving me the way I want to be seen. So Darren, you already know this, I might add. A lot of the questions we ask are because we suspect something, but don't really want to know that our suspicion is true. Fortunately for Darren and everybody else, I'm willing to explore this idea, at least as long as I'm able to accept the medicine that's bitter, but that heals. And in this instance, yes. I don't know that I'm an approval-seeking creature, and that I seek approval that I do because without someone to be for or against, should they not approve me, I'm as empty as an old bag. That consciousness has to find something to confirm itself. It doesn't care what it finds or what it does to do so. That's it. That's it. Good night, everybody.